Hello, hello. Happy Monday. I'm just going to wait a few more moments and then we will hop on. Okay. Thank you for those of you who are joining. Please get the likes up. Tag anybody on this broadcast that you think may find it interesting. Also, if you want to show some support to the channel, you can find me on CASHAPP or VENMO, ChezCharde. I'm gonna get just right into today's topic. I ran across this video I thought was really interesting. It was recorded a few years ago, but I think it's really relevant. And it's basically this woman who fell in love with this homeless dude. I guess met him like on a bench or something, but she fell in love with this homeless dude, ended up marrying him, and yeah, now they have a life together. I think they have like a couple of kids. And I actually thought this was very interesting to me because one, just listening to their story, I actually thought it was pretty beautiful. I wouldn't now. I'm not saying that I would recommend any woman to just go marry a dude off the street. I don't know that I could have done that if I'm just being totally honest. Um, but she obviously saw something in him, and listening to their story, I actually thought it was a pretty sweet story. But more importantly, what I thought was interesting is that I believe that stories like this are probably a lot more realistic than actually what many of us have been told. Because the reality is, today the economy is rough, and just because a man is successful or seeking to be successful does not mean that he falls on hard times. Most men who are successful, who are working to be successful, are going to fall on hard times. And so I thought this story was interesting because, she marries this guy. Sounds like he was in a rough season in his life, and he ends up getting it together, ends up becoming like have a good job, et cetera, et cetera. But I think before I go more into it, I'm going to play the video. Again, if you just hopped on, please get the likes up, tag anybody on this that you think may find this interesting. So I'm gonna play the video, and then you can see what I mean. Let me bring it up. Okay. I'm just gonna play it. Like I said, I'm just gonna play it, and then you'll see what I mean. Hopefully.
September the 24th, 2006. Where were you?
I was sitting on a bench on Leidseplein in Amsterdam, and I was waiting to have dinner with a friend.
Yeah.
And somebody sat down next to me and asked me what time it was. And there was a clock right in front of us, so I know that we met at 10 to 7, the exact time. And I thought it was a bit cheesy of him to ask me what time it was when there was a clock right there.
What did he look like?
He looked, I could straight away, I could see that he was homeless because he was very dirty, and his beard was bigger then and was very dirty, and his fingernails. And he was also holding a briefcase, which I thought only crazy people did.
Right.
And then later on, I found out that's where he held his sleeping bag and his beer cans, the cans of beer. But we started chatting, and I also noticed that he had the most beautiful brown eyes I'd ever seen, and he just made me laugh straight away.
So you chatted, I think your friend was about 10 minutes late, so you had about sort of this 10 minutes together. What were your first impressions of Emmy? What made you go and talk to her that day?
I was just standing around Leidseplein, and I seen this beautiful woman sitting on a bench by herself, and she just felt so comfortable by herself. Like it didn't look like she was waiting for anybody, and she was just super content, just sitting there with a smile on her face. And I decided I have to go and speak with this woman.
So how did you end up living under a bush?
It was basically a European backpacking trip that just gone a little bit too far. I'd run out of money earlier than I expected to, but I still had I hadn't done everything I wanted to do during the trip. So I just said, well, I'll do it without any money, because you can do quite a lot of things without. Especially
then gradually the wheels fell off.
Yeah, the wheels fell off, and I mean the alcoholism sort of kicked in heavy, and it was such a gradual turn that all of a sudden one day I realized, like, oh my God, I'm a homeless alcoholic, and it started.
Well, that first bench meeting was.
Okay, real quick. I'm gonna play the remainder in a few minutes, but a few things that stood out to me. First off, I actually thought it was pretty interesting that he was homeless, but he still had the confidence to go approach her. So that was actually really cool. And then another thing, as I said before, it's like he sounded like he just was falling on hard times. Doesn't necessarily mean he didn't have a plan. Doesn't necessarily mean he wasn't working on things. But this happens. This happens to people. This happens to all kinds of people who are, hard workers, or they have dreams or plans. They fall on hard times. And so one of the things, hey, thank you for those who have just hopped on. Please get the likes up, tag anybody on this that you think may find this interesting. We're going over the story that I just saw that I actually thought was really interesting, and I actually think is brings up some good points that we're talking about. So we're reviewing the video. I just stopped real quick to make some pointers, but like I said, he fell in hard times. That happens to all people. But it was interesting to me that she was still willing to give him a chance for whatever reason, and he still had the nerve to go up to her and try to holler, because like there's very women out here who it's like, bro, if you're homeless, like don't even try to talk to me. That's So anyways, I'm gonna play the video. Just wanted to say that. I want to see the black equivalent on TV. Don't hold your breath. Mr. Bobby Wright, don't hold your breath. We'll talk about that, but there is no way I cannot think of, if I'm just being honest, I can't think of one woman, but I especially can't think of any black woman that I know that would promote this ideology, or that would promote the situation. Women in general, but I'm like, especially black women, no, it's just not going to happen. So like I said, just don't hold your breath. But okay, we're going to continue to play this story. He said, white privilege is a mug, even white homeless men get it. Okay, we're gonna continue to play.
Lovely, and there was a click, and there was spark, and there was electricity, and so you were about to. Your friend arrived, and you got up to go, and then turned around and said you'd like to meet you again.
Yeah, I basically just told her to be at the same bench. What was it?
No, his exact words were, Saturday, 3:00, the same bench, and he just walked off. And I was like, what?
And then so you had a few days really to think about what had happened.
I had 5 days. Yeah, this was on a Sunday, and I just couldn't get him out of my mind. And it just didn't make sense that somebody visibly homeless could be so confident.
Thank you, Bobby Wright, for the $3 super sticker. I see black women do that with white men all the time, just not with black men. Okay, so you're saying that black men, they will, you know what? I do know of one situation of a black girl who actually legitimately dated a black bum and was paying for everything. It was a struggle love situation. Struggle love comes in all shades. And I wasn't even necessarily trying to make this a race thing, but I guess, yeah, that is a real reality, that if this was a black couple, this dude would have been all kinds of dusties. Oh my gosh, he would be the top of conversation for like a good month in the woman sphere, if you will, or a good month among a lot of the different female YouTubers, especially the black female YouTubers. He would have been clowned so hard. So yes, you were absolutely right about that. He was homeless. Yes, he was homeless. That's the crazy thing about it. And like I said, there's even more crazy is that this story got highlighted on, I think it's The Morning, whatever. This is a pretty well-known show, I think, like out in the UK. And it is funny that that's romanticized, but yeah, let's just be real. If this is a black couple or African couple or whatever, they wouldn't have gotten this coverage. Let's just call it what it is. But anyways, I want to finish the story because I do think that there are some points we can glean from this. Women in particular. Okay.
And like, because I was single and I dated loads of guys, and they were always like, yeah, maybe I'll call you, maybe I won't. And there's this homeless guy just telling me, to be back on this bench.
And you had obviously no way of contacting him.
I had no way of contacting him. Yeah.
But you went back there 5 days later, and he was late.
He was late.
Okay, wait, y'all tell me. If a black homeless dude came up to a sister and was like, hey, meet me here next month or meet me here next week, how do you think that would have went over? Let me know. Leave your comments in the comment section. But let's just be real. Let's just paint this whole couple black just for just for fun. If a black homeless dude went up to a sister and was like, hey, meet me here next week at this clock, and was being demanding, what do you think would have happened? Would the story have ended up the same? Let me know. Also, for those of you who just hopped on, please get the likes up, tag everybody on this who you think might find this interesting. Also, if you want to show some love and support to the show, you can find me on CASHAPP or VENMO, ChezCharde. Also, you can send in some super chats or stickers. Again, thank you, Bobby Wright, for sending in your super sticker. I appreciate it. Okay, let me see. So I'm gonna try to get through this. I'm gonna try to get through this without saying too much.
Late, and I felt like such a fool. And I was going to call my sister and go, he didn't turn up. And he turned up 20 minutes late on a little kid's bike,
He was
of all things. And we spent the day
on a
together.
kid's bike.
And
Oh my god.
unfortunately,
My kid's
as
bike.
well. And I really wanted to kiss him on that first date, but I didn't know if I could because of his smell.
And you said you had a wonderful day at a picnic and it was fabulous, but then that you were living in Vienna at the time, and up comes the moment where you've got to go. You have to go back. He's got no means to contact you, but you gave him your number.
I did.
And then you went back to Vienna.
And I didn't know if I was ever going to see him again. I mean, I hoped I would, and I couldn't stop thinking about him. And then 3 weeks later, I just turned 30. And I just get a phone call on a Monday morning, and it was just Vic saying, I'm here now. Okay. And he'd followed me to Vienna, and we've been together ever since.
How did you get to Vienna?
I just took the train.
How does a homeless person afford to take the train?
I mean, you can scrounge up a few euros here and there. I was quite proficient at doing that eventually.
But you were in prison during the time.
Well, not in prison. I'd been arrested for stealing a chicken, and it was on a Friday afternoon, and they're not going to let out anyone till Monday because the whole magistrate or the powers that be were not home at the moment. So I had 2 days.
Love is never a smooth one.
But somehow, I mean, I got on quite well with the people there. They saw I was just.
So life begins then. So you, like you said, from that day, you've not been separated. You have encouraged one another. I mean, you've got 6-year-old twins, but something that was really important. You encouraged him to go back into further education and kind of just find his own path.
Yeah. It was very important to me because I could tell how intelligent he was, and he's just an amazing man that it would be a waste if he didn't educate himself further. And luckily, I managed to convince you, and now he's a mechanical engineer.
I'm glad you did.
Yes. And you smell great.
Thank you. Showers every day now.
You got married. You got married in a castle.
We married in a castle. Yeah.
I mean, that is the thing.
She did get her castle wedding.
And so what do the children think of the story? How much have you told them?
We've told them everything.
We told them everything that happened. I don't think they grasped the whole concept of the social aspects of the whole thing.
Yeah.
They just thought it was quite funny that I lived in the bush, like some
book,
sort of
Daddy Lives in a Bush.
Yeah.
And that's their title for it.
Well, this is the book, How to Fall in Love with a Man Who Lives in a Bush. So it's all there.
She wrote a book about it.
But quite a lot of it is fiction.
She wrote a
your
book
story is
about
so
it.
extraordinary. Why didn't you write it factually?
Well, as a writer, I needed to make the story a bit better and a bit more exciting. So I changed a few details just to speed it up. So in the book, we meet in Vienna. We don't meet in Amsterdam. But it's a real feel-good book. And I just noticed how happy our story made people. Yeah. So I hope this book will also make people feel really good and happy.
And a really lovely, strong message throughout the whole thing of just not to judge.
That's hilarious.
Absolutely.
Okay. So y'all heard it. Y'all heard the story. So dude was homeless. She's sitting at a park waiting for a friend or something. He comes up and holler at, tries to holler or whatever. She decides to engage in a conversation. Before the conversation ends, he's like, okay, meet me here next week at this bench or whatever. She actually decides to do it. Goes back, meets this homeless dude at a bench. Dude comes late. He comes 20 minutes late on a kid's bike. They go on a date. She said on the date he smelled so bad she wanted to kiss him, but he was smelly. But for whatever reason, she was able to overlook the situation, and here they are. However many years later, they are married. They have 2 kids. He has a job. He ended up going back to school and becoming a mechanical engineer. She wrote a book about it, and it's this whole story. He said he must have said the smoothest ish ever. Shout out to him. He needs to write a book. That's real. That's real. Now, this story to me is crazy because like many of y'all know, had that be a black man, and we wouldn't even be having this conversation. He wouldn't have been on nobody's kind of show. We know he would have been called all kinds of dusties. this story wouldn't have gotten coverage. So yes, to your point, yes, white privilege is real. It is a real thing. He would have been all kinds of Pookies and Dusties and whatever. But it sounds like he was a dude that just fell on hard times. And see, and this is one thing that I will say. There are successful men out there. There are men who are planning, who have a vision, who have a goal, who they fall on hard times. Like I know of a few men in particular who, they're successful now, or they're really building, they have vision now, but it's like they were homeless for a time. They were going in between houses. So just because a dude finds himself on some hard times does not necessarily mean that he's not going somewhere with purpose. With that said, we know homeless men don't get no love. It just is what it is in society. Now, homeless women, yes, if women are homeless, then they're going to be just generally going to be more consoled. But homeless men, they usually don't get love. You just walk by them, and it's what it is. I think what was interesting about this story to me was that how, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because he said stuff to her. I don't know if it's because he sold her a story. For whatever reason, she was able to overlook all of the obvious, superficial turnoffs, for lack of a better term. Like him being homeless, she said he looked scrubby, like his clothes were dirty, he smelled bad. God only knows what convinced her to actually continue to talk to this guy. God only knows if she was in a place of a desperation, she felt like nobody else was going to be trying to talk to her. Or was it she just found him intriguing and interesting? Or was it, there's just something about him that was captivating? Whatever it is, something actually convinced her to go and continue to engage with the homeless man while he was still stinky and smelly and driving on a kid's bike. And that's a rather extreme situation. But I think the principle behind that, is that you really can't judge a book by its cover, because in today's economy, in the way things are happening, I think stories like that are a little bit more realistic than what many of us have been told, which is this guy's going to come on a big white horse, all this money, this entire empire, this entire estate, and it's just going to be easy peasy. That's really just not the reality of a lot of people, because the economy is rough out here, and even successful men who, whether you call them high value or men who make a certain kind of income, they had to go on a journey to get there. And unless you are born into privilege, which is a very small percentage of people, which is, and especially if you're Black, that it's usually not you. Unless you were born into those hyper elite billionaire families, most people become successful, they have to work to get there, and they don't just grow up having that kind of lifestyle. So it's what I can appreciate about her, although this was an extreme situation, I can appreciate the fact that she actually saw something in him worthwhile. And to me, that's a lot more realistic, I think, than what we've been told. I think it's a lot more realistic if a woman meets a guy who maybe he's not the richest at the moment, but he has good qualities, or he has a plan, or he has a vision he's working for, he has values, his character. To me, that's worth something. That's something that's worth working with. Because these days, that's much more the reality. And even 50, 60 years ago, that was reality. People usually, they married within their class and married within their neighborhood, and they built lives together. They didn't necessarily wait for this knight in shining armor, because like I said, that's not necessarily reality. So again, I'm not saying that you need to go marry a bum. That's a rather extreme situation. But I do think that there's something to be gleaned about looking past where that person is in the moment, actually seeing their value, and seeing them for what they actually truly are. And sometimes a person just isn't how they look in the moment. It's not even necessarily where they're at in the moment financially. It's so much more than that. And I appreciate that story, because I feel like she was actually able to do that. So thank you for those of you who have just hopped on. Please get the likes up, tag anybody on this who you think may find this interesting. Also, if you want to show some love, you can find me on CASHAPP or VENMO, ChezCharde. See some comments coming through. You said women can hardly resist confidence. Yes, that's what, that's the crazy thing about the video too. For those of you who are just hopping on, she said dude was homeless, but he came up to her and he was like, okay, meet me here. And she had some confidence. And for whatever reason, now it probably was, I'm thinking out the gate, she saw him as maybe conventionally or unconventionally attractive. Something about him to her was obviously attractive, because there's no way she was giving no homeless dude the time of day that she thought was ugly. Let's just be honest. So she, even though he was, maybe rugged or didn't have his beard shaved, she obviously found him sexually attractive, because no woman in her right mind is going to go with a homeless dude that smells bad and is stinky that she thinks is ugly. And she even mentioned, like, oh, he had these beautiful brown eyes. So she thought he looked good. So that probably was a huge component of it. And yes, if you were on, please get the likes up. Please get the likes up. Tag anybody on this podcast you think might find this interesting. But like I said, for me, I found that really interesting, because I'm thinking this situation to me is a lot more, rather, although it's extreme, it tends to be a lot more realistic. And I think anyone who was actually looking right now to want to build a life or to want to find love long term, I'm not saying you got to go find a homeless bum, but what I am saying is that I think it's better to work with somebody or be with somebody who has a vision. And if they're at the beginning of their vision or the middle of their vision, building their vision, that is okay. It is okay to be with somebody who is building. It is okay to be with somebody who maybe they don't have it all together on a like they haven't completely finished everything, but they're going somewhere. They're trekking somewhere. To me, that's okay. But I think, so often we want to end up with somebody that already has all those bells and whistles, all those things taken care of. Like, you want the whole package. But Kevin Sam would speak to this a lot. Like, unless you're willing to marry somebody who's maybe at the earliest 40s or 50s or 60s, and you're a young woman, you're really willing to date somebody who's a generation or 2 generations older, then you're likely going to have to be willing to work with a man as he is getting to the place he wants to be, or getting to that place, that vision. Now, what I will say is I am a firm believer that you can't change anybody. I think sometimes women can get into trouble because sometimes it's common for women to feel like they want to change guys, and them wanting to change guys, especially who are maybe F-boys or who don't want to be changed. And I'm not saying that. Like, a guy has to have it in him. He has to have the ambition. He has to have the motivation. He has to already have the drive. So I am not a supporter of you going to try to just find whoever you want and then hoping to change him, because that's not going to happen. That change has to come internally. But what I am saying, it's like, I think it's good to just look past the surface. And if you notice a guy or see a guy that has, the character, he has a drive, he has the ambition, he has a vision, he has all those things, and maybe he's not at the end of his vision yet, he's building it. To me, that's valuable. To me, that's valid. And I think sometimes things can be so superficial. Sometimes the dating metrics, relationship metrics these days can be so superficial. And again, that's damaging, because, like I said, in the economy that's going on today, people are roughing it. People are roughing it, trying to figure it out. Hardworking men and women are roughing it, trying to figure it out. And that's the reality. So he said, if that was a sister, she would have never showed up. Facts. No, like I said, first of all, if that story was a black couple, first of all, it wouldn't have ended up on nobody's primetime television, because that dude would have been called all kind of dusties. He would have been on Black Twitter. He would have been roasted. Like, and it wouldn't have gotten nowhere. But it is funny how this story, she's like, oh, I'm creating this story. It is a feel-good story, and I want people to feel happy. And I'm like, that could only happen because they're a white couple. Because let's just be honest, if that was a black couple, this homeless dude talking about, oh, I went to go see my wife on a bike and I was smelly and didn't have a job. Best believe. No, that wouldn't have gone nowhere. Y'all already know it. So that story only works, and it's only cute from a mainstream level because they're a white couple. Let's just be honest. But like I said, I think the principles of her actually being able to see something in this guy, although he was on hard times, see something in him, I thought was cool. And again, I'm not saying that you need to go, any woman needs to go and marry a homeless guy, because if I'm just being honest, if it was me, I probably wouldn't have done it. If I'm just being totally honest. And I would not necessarily recommend it unless under some really extreme circumstances, but I don't know if I would necessarily recommend it. But it worked for them. So I'm like, I'm glad it worked for you. But what I will say is, I think just because a person finds himself on a hard time does not necessarily mean that they are, worth overlooking. Like I said, if a person shows a character and the drive and the ambition and puts actions towards that, to me, that's worth working with. And I think that's, to me, I think that's what I actually got out of that situation. That was pretty cool. Now, another thing actually came up. Said he would have gotten Colin for his shoes alone. Easy. Easy. It says that happens with Black people all the time. They just won't end up married, just the pregnancy and ill feelings. I don't know. I can't say I know of many Black women who just go pick a dude off the street and then get knocked up, and then I don't know. So I'm not gonna sit here and say, yes, this happens, or no, this doesn't happen, because I don't know. I just found that to be a really rather extreme and also interesting story. Now, there's another thing that I saw. This actually happened a few days ago, but similar situation, except so the thing about this woman is, this woman, she met a man in the bush and married him. Now, I saw this situation where it was a Black woman who charged the man $15 to have sex in the bush. It's not even funny. It's so disturbing. I actually saw this off of BGS, but I'm gonna play this clip of it because it was incredibly disturbing. But I kind of want to talk about it. I want to talk about it a little bit. Okay, let me see if I can pull this up some. Also, for those of you guys who are on, please get the likes up. Tag anybody on this who you think may find this interesting. If you want to show support, you can find me on CASHAPP and VENMO. Okay. You said a Black woman would have showed up if it was the same white dude, just not for a Black man. Some of them would. I'm not going to sit here and lie. I'm not going to say that's the case for everybody, but some of them would have. I won't sit here and lie about that because self-hate, unfortunately, is real. Okay, let me see. I'm trying to figure out how to stop that. Okay. Okay. Okay, let me share this one. So, like I said, I've seen this off of BGS. Or Black Prognostic, I think it's the eldest one, Black Prognostic, yeah. But I'm gonna just play it real quick. Okay.
I just got done fucking a nigga in the bushes. Let me see your money. What you got? Girl, that's like $15. You fucked a nigga in the bushes for 15? Hell yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
All right, folks.
Oh God, that was horrible. Thank you, Gala, for the super chat. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. For those of you who have just hopped on, please get the likes up, tag anybody on here who you think may find this interesting. So for we were going over a couple who was featured on this popular show in, I want to say it's in the UK, and it was a woman who, basically, make a long story short, met this homeless man who like literally slept in a bush, and they got married. Fast forward, they have 2 kids. He's a mechanical engineer. And she leveled up, like, for lack of a better term. She had to go through process, but the homeless dude that she ended up marrying, he ended up, finishing a school and becoming a mechanical engineer, and they get paid, very well. So, they have this, seem to have a good life. They say they share their story with their kids. They laughed about it, etc. Now, I saw the video I just played of the young Black woman who seems like she's definitely under the influence of something. And she, I don't even know what to say. She met this dude and decided to have sex with this dude in the bush for $15. $15. I'm like, she could have made more working. She could have made more working at In-N-Out. You can get a more consistent paycheck that way, and you can also get a free meal. Literally, they pay more at In-N-Out. That, I don't even really know what to say. I just saw that, and I saw like, okay, this woman married a man from the bush. She had sex with a man in the bush for $15, and that's it. I I mean, both stories to me are kind of severe. But what I will say is, and BG, I think BGS he touches upon this in that video where this is actually incredibly disturbing. This situation of that young girl who thinks it's actually okay to do that is incredibly disturbing. And what I found even more disgusting about that is that whoever she was talking to was actually like was encouraging that behavior. Was encouraging that behavior. I'm like, what about that is to be celebrated? Like, how low do you value yourself? $15? Like, are you kidding me? Literally, are you kidding me? I mean, minimum wage in certain parts of California are like $15. You can literally make that working at McDonald's. So to me, that shows me how much do you value your body. If you are willing to, if you're willing to charge minimum wage for a guy that you don't even know from Adam to just have random access to you, that is incredibly disturbing. And see, here's the thing: I don't think that behavior does not need to be celebrated, and that's the thing that was really disturbing to me about that video. Is that I'm like, why was that celebrated? Like, why was that celebrated? There is nothing redeeming about that. And see, here's the thing. I don't even like I don't look at her and say that she's a horrible, she's a horrible person. Um, she looks like a young girl and God only knows what happened to her. There could have been presumably there was some form of stuff that happened to her early on, probably sexual. She could have been abused. Who knows? But obviously she was around an environment to feel as if that is okay. But I look at that and I'm like, that is so damaging and that is so hurtful. And that breaks my heart. That breaks my heart that here is this, young woman, this young woman who could do literally anything else. Like I said, you could, if times are that hard, Subway is hiring. Quite literally, Subway is hiring. And yet you choose to sell your body for what would be considered minimum wage in many of these states. And that shouldn't be celebrated. It shouldn't be celebrated. I'm over here thinking, who, like, because she went to talk to some girl and she's like, oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, was like, yeah, like giving her props. I'm like, who are you talking to? Who are you around? Like, and if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna be thoughting it up, at least get some money from it. I don't recommend it. Like, I do not support that lifestyle, but I'm like, if you are going to do that, at least charge a premium price. Don't be giving yourself over for some minimum wage. Like, really? That's just so sad to me, fam. That's sad. I see you, Chi Town. Thank you. I appreciate the love and the support. I really appreciate it. Yeah, see, I see this right here. I'm in Africa very often from Europe, go there or marry. Wait. You say you see, regular middle class or struggling African dudes all the time, years after the couple is well off, doctors, engineers, businesses. Yeah, no, that's facts. That's facts. It's very common. And that goes back to a point that I was saying earlier that for all those women or people who want high value men, there's generally a process to get there. Like, it doesn't just happen overnight. And again, Kevin Samuels speaks to this multiple times, where it's like, okay, if you're a woman and you want to marry a high value guy, are you willing to marry somebody who is at least in their 40s, at the very least, presumably more in their 50s and 60s, because that's really how long it takes for a man to get to that point. Unless he's born into privilege, which if you're black, that's likely not your situation. Let's just call it what it, for most black folks, that's just what it is. So unless you are born into privilege or you were born into a family like, one of the elite families that essentially the oligarchy who essentially runs this nation, unless that's you, 9 times out of 10, you have had to work really hard to get to that point. And so that doesn't just happen overnight. And so, yeah, it's very common to see people who may be struggling, or they may be when they're 20s, 30s or whatever, they may be struggling and building towards something because that's a lot more realistic. So yes, I agree with that comment. But anyway, so yeah, but going back to this woman, who we looked at, who for whatever reason she just gave it up for $15 a minimum wage. again, I don't, like I said, I don't know that woman, but as far as that behavior, I wish that there was more of a backlash for behavior like that. I wish there was more, that there was stronger there's stronger boundaries, because there are certain things, unfortunately, that we see in other communities that just are allowed, or no, in other communities that will never be allowed, that it's like nobody says anything. It's like it's not even an issue. um and to me, that's sad. It's sad that here's this black girl going, sound like she was talking to another black woman, and she's giving her props for going and selling her body for minimum wage. And to me, that is completely unacceptable. That is just completely and totally unacceptable. And I'm thinking, where are this girl parents? How does she get to this place where she think that this is actually acceptable? And this goes back to this, some of the points that I've been hearing a lot more and more on the internet, where it's like, hey, winter is coming. And unfortunately, women who may find themselves insecure, because either the jobs are gone away, they're not necessarily getting as much governmental support. If the funding is cut, they may resort to their bodies. And if the market is saturated, if the market becomes, or if economic opportunities lessen, and the woman would get desperate, and they start to saturate the market of prostitution, all this kind of different stuff, then we may have more 15, 10, $5 kind of situations like this. And I certainly don't hope for it. I do not hope for it. But some of the stuff is economic. Some of it is economic. And some of it's also moral, unfortunately. And this is, to me, this is where the strong, single, independent, I'm like, that, to me, that's stuff is overrated. Stuff is overrated when your strong, single, independent leads you to having to sell your body for $15. $15 for sex in the bush. To me, there's nothing strong or independent about that. I'm like, okay, something's gone wrong. Something is kind of way wrong. We need to revisit all the things that we've been told. We need to revisit all of the different. We need to revisit all the things that we believed, because when you have a young girl over here selling her body for $15 in a bush for a dude she ain't never met, and going and celebrating it to another woman like she's made it big, okay, like something is off. Because I think this is going to get worse as we go forward. I don't want to be, I hate to be like negative, but you're right. If things don't change, if the economy does not change, we're going to see more of this. We are going to see more of this. I think we're going to see more of this, and I think we're going to start to see more women pushing for polygamy. Not necessarily because they want to share a man, but if it gets to the point to where where women who have been sold into this fantasy of, hey, every woman essentially deserves their own knight in shining armor, and they start to recognize that, like, hey, there is a limited amount of rich men, and not every one of us can have that. Then instead of a woman, instead of some woman lowering their financial standards, or settling on a guy who's within their community, they might just want to go and share someone who is rich. Because it's like, okay, at least, well, I'd rather have the nice lavish lifestyle, a couple of times versus never having it. You know what I mean? I don't know. But yeah, I actually think I do think in a couple of years or decades, we actually might start to see women pushing for polygamy, if it gets to the point to where economically it's just becomes harder for women as a whole to make it. And we're already seeing this. I'm already seeing this kind of like on small levels here or there. Women, going and saying, "Oh, I'm open to polyamorous relationship," yada yada yada, and you listen to it, and sometimes it's just like, okay, why? And sometimes you listen to them, and it may be a single mother that has a few different kids from a few different dads, and there might be financial benefit to doing that. It's usually easier, maybe economically easier to share that burden with another person versus you doing it by yourself. So I don't know. Like I said, that's just what I think is going to happen. This is really, women have had this coming for a minute. Soon, I think women will need to pay us. Dang, you know what? I wouldn't even be surprised. again, I don't want to be like negative, but nothing would surprise me at this point. The way things are quickly and fastly digressing, and the things that are considered acceptable, or the things that are done without any pushback, I would not be surprised if it got to that point. It says, I personally hope is it Charlotte Law doesn't happen, but if it happens, oh well. Yeah, so we'll see. Okay, so you said, I think we're gonna see a rise in female communities. Yeah, I think, I think there's gonna, personally, I think we may see what is that term? There's like a term where somebody continues to it's a term where people marry their friends. It's not sologamy. I don't think it's sologamy, but yeah, it's basically a term where people marry their friends. So I think we're going to see some people starting to marry their friends and being in maybe sexless marriages for financial necessities. I do think we're going to see some people pushing for polygamy, just for financial reasons. And I think we're also going to see more and more women having $5 situationships in the $5, $10, $15 situationships in the bush. And I hate to say it, I don't want to be negative, but like I said, if the situation does not change, and if there is not a realization of like, hey, what we are doing as a community, as a Black community in general, is not working. This is not working for us. If there is not a drastic change, then I mean, this is what's going to happen, because things are quickly digressing economically and on levels. Platonic marriages. Yeah. I thought there was like a technical name for it, but maybe it is platonic marriages. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a increase in platonic marriages, literally out of necessity. So anyways, thank you for those of you who have hopped on. Please get the likes up or tag anybody on this who you think may find this interesting. Basically what we did, we went over 2 different stories. And also I want to thank all of those who you sent in your super stickers. If you want to show some support to this show, you can find me on CASHAPP and VENMO, ChezCharde. But yeah, so we went over 2 stories. We went over the first story, which was it was a woman who met a homeless guy in the bush. And make a long story short, she fell in love with him, got married. They have 2 kids. He's a mechanical engineer, and she wrote a book about it. And they seem to be having a good life. I wanted to talk about that story, one, because I felt, although that was an extreme situation, I felt as if that situation was a lot more realistic. And the reason I say that is, I think it's a lot more realistic for a woman to see value in a man for whatever reason and to work with him and to build with him. That's a lot more realistic than saying, oh, I'm going to wait. This dude needs to have this already together or that already together, and kind of create this arbitrary list that's not really based upon reality. That is not realistic. And especially in an economy that's becoming so much more volatile and so much more difficult to a certain capacity, I think it's almost deadly to put yourself in the mindset to limit yourself from ever working with somebody or cooperating with somebody or being able to, to build a family or to build anything with somebody just because of some arbitrary list that's not based upon reality. So again, while she did something that was rather extreme, her seeing value in the homeless man and marrying him, I'm not saying I necessarily recommend that. I think the fact that she was able to see something in this guy and work with that, to me, I think there's a lesson in that. And I think it's a lot more realistic for any woman today who does want to find a long-term relationship to do that, to be willing to work with a man who has a vision, who has a plan, who has things going together, whether or not he is fully operating in that vision and things are already together, or whether he's on the process. Because any man who is successful, unless he was, again, born into privilege, which is a very small percentage of people, especially if you're Black, unless he's a man that's born into privilege, he has to work to get there. There is a process and there is a journey. And as Kevin Samuels himself even said, men don't even really hit the financial stride until the 40s, 50s. So I think she did good because, here he is now, mechanical engineer. She's a writer. And look, I did writing for a long time. I still do, but I did it. And I know writers don't necessarily always make that much money. You can, but no, you're not being rich. So she's a writer. He's a mechanical engineer. Chances are he probably makes more than her. Let's just be real, because writers don't necessarily make money like that, not unless like they're best selling. And like I said, that's a very rare Very, very, very rare case. So anyways, she leveled up. At the end of the day, she leveled up, got a guy who's able to, make a good amount of money. And he was homeless, literally homeless. She said he was smelly when she met him. So, right. He said, I think you should be applauding her. Yeah, no, I like I said, I think she actually, she was a lot more realistic. Again, a rather extreme situation, but I think she had the right mindset. Obviously, she saw something good in this guy, and I think that's, to me, I think that's worth. That's the kind of mindset that we need to have. I have a really good friend of mine. And I told her this. I'm like, this has to say this. Have a really good friend of mine. She's a white woman marrying a black guy, and we were having a conversation a few weeks ago, and she was telling me how he recently quit his job, and they're in a situation where right now she's helping to support him because he wants to help focus on his business. And we're having this conversation. She's like, I'm in a position right now to do so. He has this vision I believe in. Of course I would support him. And so it's like, she's really holding down the bills right now. And he's working towards his vision, but she's holding on the bills. He moved into her place. They sold the car. They're using one car, and like, she's working with him. And I told her, I was like, I'm listening to her, and I'm like, it is so amazing that you believe in him. And here's a cool part about it. Give it 5 years, his business becomes really successful. You're now, staying at home with the kids that you guys want to have or whatever. And unfortunately, Black women are going to come to you and be like, why do all the good Black men marry Becky? I'm like, guaranteed. I don't want to be a naysayer, but I'm like, if this happens, if a few years down the line happen, his business takes off, you're in a financial situation now where you can kind of relax. Do not be surprised if you start to get hate from Black women. And I hated to say this, but I was like, man, like this is why certain men are dating out of the community, because that kind of mindset of like, hey, I'm willing to hold things down right now because I see the vision in him. Like, I believe in the vision in him. I'm like, that's a beautiful thing. He would have been crazy to pass somebody like her by. And I'm like, unfortunately, women, especially women of color, we're not necessarily always taught to do that. I think sometimes there's such this idea of trauma bonding, or there's such this idea that like, I'm going to be abused, I'm going to be taken advantage of, I'm going to be the mule for the family, that sometimes I think we're not even willing to work with men or work with Black men in the community the way women of other cultures are. And that's unfortunate, because it's some of those good men that get passed by because they don't come in this particular package that is just not, that's based upon fantasy. So I talked to her one day and I was like, you are literally one of the reasons that Black women go around saying, oh, why do all the good Black men marry Becky? And I'm over here thinking, where were the Black women when this man was down and out, or when he wasn't making a lot of money? He quit his job and he's grinding, but he's not bringing any money. Where were the Black women? What woman do I know who will be willing to be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to support you and your vision right now. I'm literally going to work because I'm financially blessed to do so. I'm going to work. You focus on this business. You know what I mean? And then we're going to work towards it. And I'm just listening to her and I'm like, man, that's crazy. Because I know a lot of women would not have been willing to do that, but she saw it in him and she believes in him, and he's grinding, he's working, and it's like, yeah, it's going to be successful. So, yeah. So I don't know. It's just, it's an interesting thing. It's interesting. So again, that is the point. I think, yeah, that situation is rather extreme. The lady going with the homeless man, but I think it's a good lesson that, literally don't judge a book by its cover. And sometimes people hit hard times, but it doesn't necessarily define who they are. They get out of those hard times and they end up making it successful. And that's what he did. He was homeless. He said he was a homeless, alcoholic. And we don't necessarily know what process he went through. He maybe went through AA or different things. But case in point, he has a happy family now, 2 kids. He's a mechanical engineer. They're doing well. And like I said, that is the story sometimes of successful men and women. They hit hard times. And it's a bad idea to just overlook somebody based upon some arbitrary list versus really looking in and saying, okay, does this person have value? Does this person have, is this person working towards something? Do I see something in them that I think is worth partnering with? So those are my thoughts. And then lastly, we also looked at the other situation with the Black the Black woman, unfortunately, I can bring her up. Who? Let me see. Let me see. Let me bring her up. Okay, I was trying to do that. It's acting weird. Yes, this Black woman. I ran across this on BGS's channel. You said too many Black women were raised to fear and distrust Black men. Bingo, bingo. And I think that is really, I think that's a big, big, big component. There has been so much fear. There has been so much like fear mongering within the Black community. It's like there is, and it's almost you are to the point where many of us actually come in guarded in our relationships. We come in completely guarded, and yeah, there has been trauma. There has been different things that are unique that have happened to the Black community that I think can't necessarily be overlooked. But I think the very fact that there are many of us who have been taught to distrust Black men by default, to just assume that they're guilty until proven innocent, I do think that leads to a lot of issues. And it also causes problems when you have those very same women that are taught to distrust Black men, and then in doing so they choose Black men who are untrustworthy, and then it kind of reinforces this bad scenario. And then at the end, maybe after having a few baby daddies or bad situations, they say, okay, therefore I'm going to divest. And if you think that white is right, or if you think just going outside the community is right, and you haven't dealt with any of the trauma internally, that can create even more damage. So I feel like it's a whole other topic. But yeah. But anyways, yeah, so going back to the Black woman who was selling her body for $15 for having intercourse with a guy in a bush. And she was being celebrated for it from some women. And all I can say is that that's very disturbing. Unfortunately, I think we're going to see more of it. But I don't think that should be celebrated. I think that kind of behavior should be condemned. I'm not saying the woman herself should be condemned. I think she needs help, obviously, but that behavior should not be celebrated. I don't vibe with that. I don't think that's good. I think that's dehumanizing. I'm like, first of all, I don't even support prostitution, but if you are going to be a prostitute, if you are going to do that, at least charge a premium price. Don't sell your body for minimum wage. I'm like, she literally could have made more working at In-N-Out. She probably would get more consistent hours, and she would get a consistent meal. So I'm like, it's like you're selling yourself so short. Why do you devalue your body so much? And that's a whole nother conversation. And see, and that's the thing about it too. There is this narrative of, there's this narrative of like, Black men not protecting Black women, which that's another thing that I'm going to address another time. But it's like, okay, it's like, granted, if you want to say Black men don't protect Black women, but it's like, how about when there's women in the community where we haven't been taught how to protect ourselves or even respect ourselves? Because it's like, if you're a woman who you are selling yourself for $15 in a bush, you're likely putting yourself in situations too where you could be harmed. And if you're making choices to do that, that also is not necessarily the fault of just some random Black guy that doesn't know you from Adam. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't want to say it's complicated, but that narrative, I think there's so much more than just like, oh, all Black men just need to start protecting Black women. Like, I agree there are situations where, yeah, people should be protected, but it also needs to be talked about what's going on. What are the situations that are happening to where sometimes people are putting themselves in bad scenarios? Why are we even given to that point? But again, that's another topic. So anyways, it says no one. He says, can blame the pastors. No one fear monger is better than the neighborhood pastor. You talking about Pastor Pork Chop? Pastor Pork Chop, that's a real thing. And like I said, I mean, I am actively involved in a church community, but I also know I've had my fair share of Pastor Pork Chop. So like I understand what you're saying. Anyway, so I think I'm about to sign off. You'll actually have another thing to go to. But I want to thank all of you guys who have hopped on. Again, if you like this, if you found this helpful or interesting or whatever, please feel free to share it, tag anybody on here, get the likes up, please. Also, if you want to show support to this show, you can find me on CASHAPP and VENMO, ChezCharde. So anyways, thank you all of you guys for hopping on. Thank all of you guys for joining. I appreciate you guys, and we'll talk later. Bye.